Hey there, it's Christian from 7 Gaming Network, and I'm here with a review for New Angeles. It's a new game from Fantasy Flight Games, in which players take on the role of megacorporations set in the dystopian, futuristic setting of the Android universe, which if you've ever played Netrunner, you'll know and recognise a lot of the setting from having played that. Now, what you are doing is, as these mega corporations, is you are running the city of New Angeles, and you are working together, but you're also trying to outdo one another. And we'll talk a little bit more about that aspect of the game as the review progresses. Now, hanging over all of this is the threat of the federal government coming in to take over the city if you do a bad job as a group of players. And this is, in a sense, almost a balancing mechanic in terms of if you do really poorly as a group, the game's going to end earlier, but the game itself should normally last around about 2 to 3 hours is the typical sort of time frame for this game. Now, the number of players is a slightly unusual one. It's 4 to 6, so it's a minimum of 4 players. Which might impact how easy it is for you to get this game out onto the table. But certainly, if you can get that number of players together, then as you'll find, you're going to have a good experience. Now then, first of all, value for money. So this is a game that cost around about 50 British pounds. It's about the same in terms of American dollars, and let's have a look at what you get for it in terms of the value. Well, as you can see, what you get is fine. It's a fine amount. Here we have got a nice big board, a beautiful board. Now, this is going to keep track of a lot of information throughout the game. And so it needs to be big. I mean, this is taking up quite a bit of the table here, and I've got a big table that extends out of camera. But as we were playing on it, I was struck at just how much space it is taking up. So do take that into account when you're thinking about buying this game. You do need quite a big table to be able to play it and fit everything on comfortably. Now, there's lots of tokens and cards, and they're all the excellent sort of production quality that we've come to expect from Fantasy Flight Games. And then we have these models. Now, when I first saw the models, my initial reaction was, well, that's a very unusual colour they've picked for them, but also it's one of those things where I often think, oh, do we really need a bunch of models? It's probably adding 15 to 20 pounds to the game, something like that. Is it really all that necessary? Or is it just a bit gimmicky? And having played through the game, I actually feel like it was a really important design decision, production decision, that they made these models. There are a lot of tokens going on with this board, a lot of information being tracked. And I think if these particular things, which are what these are tracking, are some of the more important aspects of what's going on in the city, if these hadn't been nice, big, very beautiful, these are really nice models, and very bright, obvious units on the board, it would have been quite difficult to keep track of. As it is, they give you great feedback, and this is a game where you are making lots of decisions throughout the game, taking into account lots and lots of factors. So the fact that they made these nice, clear, bright figures, I think is a real bonus. Now then, setup takes around about 15 to maybe even 20 minutes. It can be quite long. It's quite an involved setup. Now, you do get to have a sort of a scenario card that sets up the city for the initial game state, the start of the game. And there are a whole variety of things that can happen in the city, or be the case in the city. And so how the board sets up initially will heavily influence certainly the initial challenges, if you like, that you as a group will face. Now, I think there's a lot of replayability in the fact that you can set up a scenario, you can play it through, you might beat it, you might not, but if you don't, you could very easily set it up and play that the next time through. and you've actually got 6 different scenarios in here. So I think that straight away that's already giving quite a bit of replayability to this game. Now, in terms of setup, the 2 big things that I'm going to talk about are the fact that there are these different corporations and what they're like, and rival cards. But before I go into that, I'm just going to explain to you a little bit about the winning and losing of the game. Now, a corporation's score, which is in this game called capital, it's a capital game, you're trying to make money, will help determine how well you do. And you can have a situation where you have a number of winners in the game and a number of losers in the game. You could also have the situation where everybody loses. You will always have at least one loser, and you could have multiple winners. Now, how you win and lose is really dictated by these cards, these rival cards that are handed out at the start of the game. Now, what you have on here is who's going to be your rival. So that will have on there details of another corporation. You could potentially get your own corporation, and they've made allowances for that. Now, what happens with this is who you need to score more capital than to win the game. It's a fascinating mechanic, and I will again talk more about that as the review progresses, because how that fits into the game and how it changes your experience of the game is really fundamental. But suffice it to say, you are trying to beat your rival to win the game. It doesn't matter if somebody else scores more capital than you. If they're not your rival, you're not too fussed, okay? Because whether you'll be a winner is whether you beat your rival or not. Now, the little caveat that's in here is that everyone will lose if the federal government sweeps in and takes over. The mechanic for that is if the threat, i.e. things going wrong in the city, reaches 25. But one player may well receive a card called the Federalist. Now, the Federalist is someone who, if the game reaches 25 threat and the federal government sweeps in and takes over the city, if that happens, the Federalist, well then you can win, as long as you've also reached 25 capital. So, there is a traitor mechanic in this game, but what makes it quite unique is that there are more cards here than players in the game. And so, whenever you sit down for a game of this, not only do you have the unique aspect of, well, who's my rival going to be this time round, and of course, you'll get a different experience depending on what corporation that is and who the player is who's playing that, if you know your gaming group. But also you may well have a traitor amongst you who is going to be this Federalist who is trying to make sure that the city goes wrong and that the federal government comes in. This is secret information. You're not allowed to reveal your rival card. So this creates this wonderful game state at the start where you're looking around the group, you're thinking, right, is anybody trying to specifically beat me? You're also trying to not give away who it is that you are set up to try and beat, and you're also trying to manage this aspect of, is one of us a traitor? So, the game then progresses, actually in a very simple manner. You have 2 rounds, a demand round, another 2 rounds, a demand round, and then a final 2 rounds, and a final demand round. And in each of these rounds, you will have players a number of turns, and each player's turn is really all about doing a deal. So when a player begins their turn, they'll gain a number of these cards, and these are cards that have things on that you can change the city with. Okay, they become an offer that you say, I think we should do this. We should fix power outages. We should move our androids to where our production happens, or whatever we think needs to happen. And there are 5 different areas that you can start doing these things with. So you've got security, biotech, construction, media, and labour. And all of the cards have they will lean towards doing a particular thing when they come from a particular aspect of running the city. And each of the corporations that you start with will have a specialism. If you're NBN, that's the news corporation, you're going to have more media cards. If you're Wayland, the construction, building a better world corporation, you're going to have more construction cards, and so on. Now that sounds fairly simple and straightforward, but what it means is that depending on what's happening on the board, you're almost looking then to certain corporations to say, hey, come on, you need to be the one sorting this out. So as the deals progress, what will happen is you take an asset, and then this is the carrot. This is what you're going to win if you win the deal. And then the player whose turn it is will make an offer from his hand of cards, and that'll be the main offer. This is the point where everyone leans in, has a read of them, and then sits back and goes, oh, I'm not sure about that, or that's a great idea, that's exactly what we need to do. And straight away, discussion and debate springs up. And then the play progresses with everyone else sat at the table can start to make a counter offer from their hand. And again, once a counter offer comes in, everyone will lean in, what's this one? You read it, and then, oh, that's much better than that initial offer, or no, that's terrible, we definitely need to be going with the first one. It really feels like everyone can be invested almost all the time through this game. There is very little downtime. What then happens is a round of voting will then take place. And I think this is where some of the real depth of this game starts to come out, because you have to consider, if that one goes off, if that deal is what happens and we change this thing in the board state, what else is going to happen? So each of these corporations will gain capital when certain things in the city happen. So if power outages are removed from the city, well, Wayland are going to benefit from that, because they probably had to use some of Wayland's construction employees or whatever to make it happen. If illness is removed from the board, well then Jinteki's going to benefit from that, because they probably came up with the medicines and had to use Jinteki medicines to heal, to sort out the illnesses. It's that kind of thing. So when you're considering which offer you should be supporting, you're also having to take into account, well, who's my rival? Are they going to benefit from this? And also, of course, there can be genuine division over, well, what is the best thing to do in the city? And so how you then vote becomes this wonderful political, intriguey way of trying to get what you think should happen to push through. And in a brilliant little twist, they've given you the option to do trading. You can even trade your capital to another player if you think a particular offer needs to go through, because maybe it will benefit you with more capital in the long run, or perhaps a powerful asset, or so on and so forth. So that creates a whole other layer to the deal making process. You know, when it comes to the last player, there's 2 votes on each one, and you are the sort of kingmaker, as it were. Then the deals that can start coming in, and the trades that the players are offering you to make sure a certain one goes off, it's delicious. It's great fun, and it really is. It's exciting all the way along. So the deal goes through, and something in the city changes. Now, just to give you a little bit of a flavour of an example, really, of the kind of things that you're dealing with, in the city in our game, we had lots of unrest starting to bubble up across the city, and unrest stops production, so we don't like that. Now, my rival was NBN. Now, NBN gained capital. My rival starts doing better when unrest is getting reduced in the city. So I had to walk this fascinating tightrope of trying to make sure that we managed unrest enough so that our production would go off and that there wouldn't be too many other issues, whilst also not wanting too many of his offers of, well, I can sort out unrest with my media capabilities, without too many of them getting through, so that he built up lots of capital. All the while trying to not reveal that he's my rival and that I'm trying to make sure I outdo him. So my experience of the game, I feel, was probably very different to everybody else's, because all the factors that I'm taking into account in what I want to see happen in this game become completely unique to me, because of who my rival is and because of the board state. Now, in a further layer of interest in the game, and I also think replayability, these various assets that you start to pick up through the game, they're almost invariably people, employees that are coming to work for your corporation. They bring new abilities to your corporation. And so what happens is these abilities allow you to start building up a unique collection of abilities. And it so further customizes and specializes your experience as that particular corp. Each corp is playing really quite differently and has particular things, of course, that they're always watching out for on the board to make sure they get their capital, or to try and push for to see happen in a game. And when you also add in these assets that are building up, that are giving you various abilities, such as, for instance, an asset that I had in our game allowed me, if it was my turn and I was the player making a main offer, if I was counter-offered and another player won the deal, I was able to then steal 2 capital from that countering player. And that was a super powerful ability, because essentially when it came to my turn, I was winning. I would either win the deal, and great, I get a new asset and see what I wanted to happen go through, or I was going to gain 2 capital, stealing it from another player, seeing them go down by 2 capital. So there was, I was going to win. That's a powerful asset. And of course it uniquely changes how I experienced the game that time round. And I saw this happening lots and lots of time, guys. There just seemed to be so many unique things happening in the game that allowed everybody to feel like their experience and their little pie of trying to run the city was really quite different, and yet trying to influence everybody else. Great fun. And the fact that it's a competitive, cooperative game, I think has got real legs. Part of the reservations I maybe had about this game was that it looked like it was potentially very similar to Battlestar Galactica. Now, many of you will know it's a super popular game. I have it, I love it, and it's marvellous. And what I was concerned about is, and what I wanted to find out is, whether there was space for both of them in my collection, with Battlestar Galactica being a cooperative game with this traitor element. What's different about New Angeles is that, well, the theme actually does feel really quite different. Yes, you are all sort of working together to look after something, but the city plays very differently, it feels very different, and the fact that the mechanism by which anything happens is this sort of all trying to come to group consensus, or just trade and sort of manipulate your way to seeing what you want to happen, is fundamentally different to Battlestar, where you say, well, it's my action, I'm going to do this and make this happen. So I think that creates a very different feel, and a further layer to the change in atmosphere is simply down to the fact that this is a cooperative game that might have a traitor in. It doesn't definitely have a traitor in like BSG does, and also that is the cooperative competitive element. I mean, when you're in BSG, you are generally trying to all be cooperative. Many games that they're building now are cooperative games. It's a popular mechanic, but here it's tempered by the fact that yes, you have to be cooperative, but also at the same time you are trying to outdo certain other people. So I really feel like it's more than different enough. So I feel like my experience of the game can really be summed up simply by telling you how this game ended. Because for me, a good game, it builds a story, it makes a story, and actually a good story makes a game. And I feel like that with this game, that's really what happened for me and for us. We had a situation where unrest was building and building and building through the city. It was turning into riots, much to the consternation of my NBN rival. But what ended up happening was more and more of these sort of anarchic protest units that stirred up trouble started to pop up all over the city. And we were working so hard as a group to try and contain them and control them. We were using up emergency powers. We were trying to get down security units to try and get rid of them and keep them under control. And this was right in the last turn of the game, the last round of the game, as we were building to see if we could finish the game and win. And it really came down to the very last placement of the very last character that allowed us to realise we had just lost. And the federal government swept in and took over simply because the city was in chaos, complete rioting. And the group collective, oh no, was loud and very, very obvious when that happened, because we didn't have a federalist, so no one was a traitor in our game, and that's another thing. We just lost without a traitor in the camp. It'd be very interesting to see if we had a traitor, how much more would we have lost by. Again, the replayability that comes into that is huge, and of course now I feel like we're really keen to do that scenario again, that the way that this one's set up, and see if we can beat that one as a group, as a team. But of course everyone's experience is going to end up being really quite different again, with different rivals and the potential of having that traitor in the game. So, all things told, this was an excellent experience. I really was actually surprised at quite how much I enjoyed it. This is a game for people who really like to have debate and discussion around the table, where you're all trying to work together. So if you like cooperative games, it is cooperative. There absolutely are elements. It is very cooperative. You have to be. But I think the fact that it's a competitive cooperation is what serves to carve out a niche for this game, and the fact that there is the potential traitor but not necessarily a traitor in really give this game enough difference and enough flavour. Ultimately, it's great. Loved this New Angeles game, and it comes heartily recommended, especially if you've got a big enough group of players for this to regularly hit the table. So, New Angeles, a great new game. So, New Angeles gets a thorough thumbs up from us here at 7 Gaming Network. We had an absolute blast playing this, and I really hope that if you manage to get your hands on a copy of it, you enjoy it as much as well.